Fox News alert, and let's focus on Russia. President Vladimir Putin says Moscow ready for nuclear war if threatened.
Putin's latest warning to the West as some NATO nations like France and Poland refuse to rule out sending troops to Ukraine.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us live from Washington. Hey, Lucas.
Good morning, Steve, Ainsley, and Brian. This is the second time since late last month that Putin has warned he's ready to use nukes if Russian sovereignty is threatened. This time on the eve of his election, which is all but assured, of course, that he will continue running the country for another 6 years. He first rose to power 25 years ago when Bill Clinton was president. In a new interview, Putin said, quote, "From a military technical point of view, we are, of course, ready. There are enough specialists in the field of Russian-American relations and in the field of strategic restraint. Therefore, I don't think that here everything is rushing to nuclear confrontation, but we are ready for this." Putin added he doesn't think the world is headed toward nuclear war. The nuclear threats have ramped up after French President Emmanuel Macron recently refused to rule out sending troops to Ukraine. As you guys mentioned, House Democrats and some centrist Republicans are looking at a way to force a vote on the Senate's $95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, using a discharge petition, a procedure that has not been used in Congress in nearly a decade. The GOP has another bill that would reduce spending to $66 billion to focus on weapons for Ukraine, as well as money to strengthen the southern border of the United States. Now, speaking of defense spending, President Biden's new budget only increases defense spending by 1%, which is a cut when you factor in inflation. This will be the fourth straight cut to defense under Biden. And in case you guys are wondering, the U.S. military keeps tactical nukes in Europe in 5 countries: Belgium, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Turkey. And Britain is prepared to bring American nukes back after removing them back in 2008, guys.
All right, Lucas, thank you very much. Live report from Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, let's bring in Florida Republican Congressman Cory Mills, who is on the Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committee. He joins us right now. Cory, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So what do you make of Putin kind of out of nowhere warning the West that Russia is ready for war? How much does it have to do with Ukraine, or how much does it have to do with, as Lucas just said, this week he stands for re-election? Maybe this is for the domestic audience.
Well, I mean, it's not the first time that Vladimir Putin has made comments regarding any type of a nuclear readiness, or even in the past where he said that he was prepared to use tactical small nuclear strikes within Ukraine. This obviously came under a tremendous amount of scrutiny when it came by the international community, and that's why I think he was very cautious in his wording this time to say, well, of course we're ready. Well, that's the case with all nuclear-armed nations. But if you do remember that this individual has also violated treaties multiple times, which is why President Trump removed us from the INF Treaty to begin with. So I think it's a little bit of a political rhetoric to allow himself to be reelected and tell the Russian people that I'm strong, I am ready to fight, and that we will not lose our sovereignty. But I think it's also a bit of a warning, too, where he has actually tried to bring a peace talk before the Ukrainians as well as for the international community, which he blames the U.S. for trying to basically stonewall. And so I think that there is a point of negotiation that can still be had. I think that, as he said, they're not rushing towards nuclear war. But again, as a nuclear nation, of course, he would be ready just as we are.
Yeah, Congressman, another public warning from Putin just to discourage us, Americans, from getting involved. But the House Democrats and some of the centrist Republicans want this aid package. It's $95 billion for Ukraine. But many Republicans are saying it needs to include something, language about our southern border, to protect our southern border. The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency Director William Burns, he said earlier this week, if the West didn't provide proper support for Ukraine, Kyiv would lose more territory to Russia, which could embolden China. What do you say about the funding?
Well, first off, let me just go ahead and say that the CIA director are political appointees, and we know this, so he's going to echo anything that the Democrat Party and the Biden administration would like him to echo. I don't think that we should go ahead and ever lump our southern border funding into international aid packages. We must prioritize our southern border first. That's the greatest threat to American lives and to American safety and American sovereignty. I like what Speaker Mike Johnson has said, where he said we will not bring a single Ukrainian package to the floor to vote on until our southern border is closed. That is the the right response. And so I am not in favor of spending $95 billion knowing that we're at $34 trillion in debt. And as it was stated earlier, we've got a negative of 1% spending caps every single year under the Biden administration. We're actually declining under Bidenomics to fund our own military, to be prepared and ready and robust. Now, we're the strongest volunteer armed forces in the world, but that doesn't mean that we go ahead and cut our military spending or not secure our own border in the efforts of securing others.
It's going to be interesting because Vladimir Putin, if he gets Ukraine, you know he's not going to stop. They attack a NATO nation. It's going to cost us a lot more even to deploy troops in those NATO countries, which has already cost us more since they invaded Ukraine. But I agree with you. They should separate them both. Obviously, they got themselves in trouble in the Senate because they didn't agree with the bipartisan deal on the border. Therefore, the aid gets stopped and the border deal gets stopped, and the Democrats walk away with a talking point on that they didn't deserve because they broke the border. They have no interest in going to the border, and now they're saying that you guys are the ones standing in the way of the border. But we understand $200 million has been repurposed that should help them out for the next few weeks, and they're going to be sending ATACMS over there. What have you heard about that?
Well, the ATACMS discussion has been happening for quite some time. That was going to be a follow-up to the HIMARS system that was approved right before I came into Congress, actually. And it's kind of been slow-rolled. You know, it started out as the Javelin, then it became the HIMARS, then it became the ATACMS. Right. You're seeing where a readiness and availability of longer-range strike capabilities for defense is actually necessary, and so I do see that. But again, we should not have been involved in this war the way that we were from the beginning. This is an EU matter that we should have been supporting in a different element, and I do agree we should never be putting troops on the ground, but I'm not so confident that they're going to attack a NATO nation knowing that Article 5 can get enacted. I don't think Vladimir Putin is that suicidal on this. I think he's a little more tactical. All
right, and Congressman, hats off to you because unbeknownst to the world, until it was announced yesterday by Lisa McClain, a congresswoman from the great state of Michigan, you launched a rescue mission in Haiti. I think we've got the soundbite. Let's go ahead and play it. Here she is yesterday.
This is the third time this administration has abandoned Americans abroad. I coordinated with Congressman Cory Mills to rescue several Americans trapped in Port-au-Prince. Congressman Mills actually participated in the rescue of those Americans abandoned by the Biden administration and the State Department.
So, Congressman, she asked you to get involved. She's from Michigan. 8 of the 10 were from Michigan. What did you do?
Well, look, this is unfortunately a pattern of abandonment by the Biden administration that has existed since 2021, whenever he left Americans behind in Afghanistan. You know, I always look at the fact that if the government's not going to be willing to do its job, then America has to step up and do certain things that are required. You know, when I went into Afghanistan, we conducted the first successful overland rescue when Congressman Ronnie Jackson out of Texas 13 asked me to rescue a mother and 3 children left behind. In October 7th, we had the horrific incident, obviously, in Israel. And by October 11th, I had conducted the first rescue on ground for 32 Americans, 45 the next day, with a total of 255 that I ended up rescuing out of Israel. And this is no different. He was leaving Americans behind. This Have Faith orphanage had asked the State Department for support and help, and they said, we're preparing something for evacuation. What they didn't tell them is they were preparing their own evacuation. They were evacuating non-essential State Department personnel, but not the Americans. Look at this. Look at the precedent that's being set, and I just want to paint a picture here. Walls don't work until we have a State of the Union, then we put a wall up around the Capitol. We are working on evacuations, but we can't get to you, but we can evacuate American, non-essential mission personnel from the State Department. This is sending a direct message that the federal government only cares about government, not about the American people. This is the wrong thing to say, and I can tell you, I don't subscribe to that. If Americans are abroad and they're in trouble, I'm going to come to their aid, and if Biden's not willing to do his job, I'll do it for him.
Yeah, well, who's ever going to help out if we have to be bailed out by private citizens? How are they getting away with it? But they're going to write a $200 million check to Haiti. Where that's going, maybe to the Kenyan forces, which is insane.
Congressman, really quickly, were these missionaries?
Some were missionaries and some were philanthropists. It was a total of 10 Americans. We conducted a night operation departing out of a neighboring country by helicopter, came in, landed in a makeshift HLZ helicopter landing zone, and I believe that by the time we had coordinated everything throughout the night, we were able to get on the ground for about 1 minute and 7 seconds for a complete hot load with the helicopter running, get them in, and there was some video of that, and then we were able to safely get get them extracted and get out.
Oh,
Well-
God bless you. Thank you so much.
No kidding, you saved them.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Cory, last question. Who pays for this?
I did.
Wow. Well, you should set it.
What's your website if people would like to
Help you
contact
out.
you?
Well, I'm partnered up with an organization called Never Forgotten Foundation. I had started before I ran for office. It was to help Americans and help children abroad that are being exploited. I have now obviously divested the minute that I was elected, but they're still going on and doing great things under the one of the co-founders with me. But we're trying to do everything we can to try and rescue and keep Americans safe, not just here at home, but also abroad.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
shouldn't have to.
The Episcopal Church is very involved in projects down in Haiti. So many evangelicals go down there to help with the orphanages. Thank you so much. That's amazing.
Job well done, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.